I knew the moment I said I do that Amanda was out of my league. The daughter of a prominent real estate mogul, she had it all: beauty brains and a trust fund. Me, just a construction manager from the wrong side of town. For 5 years we made it work, building a life that blended our two worlds. That is until her college friends came back into the picture. I never expected that a simple dinner party would reveal the truth about our marriage, or that I would hear those crushing words, "You deserve better than him. He is out of your league." If you have ever felt like you did not belong in your partner's social circle, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself when nobody else would. Now let me tell you how I discovered my worth. I grew up watching my father build things with his hands. He was a carpenter, worked honest hours for honest pay, and taught me everything about construction from the moment I could hold a hammer. We did not have much, but we had pride in our work. When I turned 18, I started as a laborer on construction sites while taking night classes in construction management. Nobody handed me anything. Every promotion, every raise I earned through sweat and determination. By 34, I had worked my way up to managing major commercial construction projects across the city. I oversaw teams of 50-plus workers, managed million-dollar budgets, and had the respect of everyone in my industry. My hands might be calloused, but I had built something from nothing, and nobody could take that away from me. I met Amanda 5 years ago, when I was overseeing the renovation of a historic venue downtown. Her family foundation was hosting their annual charity gala there, and she was checking on the progress. I remember the first time I saw her clipboard in hand designer heels clicking against the concrete floor that my team had just poured the week before. She was stunning in a way that made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. Blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, sharp blue eyes that noticed every detail, and a smile that somehow made you feel both important and intimidated at the same time. I expected her to be another entitled client, but she surprised me. When I showed her around the site, she asked intelligent questions about the construction process. She seemed genuinely impressed by my knowledge and did not look down on me for my work boots and safety vest. When she asked me to coffee to discuss some changes to the venue layout, I assumed it was strictly professional. After our third coffee meeting, when she touched my arm and laughed at my terrible joke about concrete setting, I realized this might be something more. Our dating phase was like a fairy tale collision of two different worlds. I took her to my favorite hole-in-the-wall diners where the waitresses knew my order by heart. She took me to restaurants where I could not pronounce half the menu, but somehow it worked. She never made me feel less than, and I introduced her to a simplicity she found refreshing. Her family was another story. Her father, Thomas Warren, owned half the commercial real estate in the city. The first time I met him at their mansion in the hills, he barely shook my hand. Her mother, Catherine, looked me up and down, like I was something the cat dragged in. But Amanda stood firm. She told them she had found someone real in a world of pretenders, and eventually they began to warm up to me. 2 years after we met, I proposed, not with a flashy diamond that would impress her friends, but with my grandmother's ring that my father had saved for me. To my surprise and joy, she cried and said yes immediately. Our wedding brought together oil workers and oil barons, construction crews, and country club members. For one perfect day, the social boundaries seemed to disappear. Even her father gave a toast that made me feel welcome in the family. The first 2 years of our marriage were everything I could have hoped for. We bought a house that was a compromise between her luxury tastes and my practical nature. We traveled, we built a home together, we talked about starting a family. She never seemed to regret marrying down, as some of her relatives not so subtly put it. The trouble began when Amanda reconnected with her college friends. Jessica, Tara, and Sophia had all been sorority sisters with her at a prestigious university. After graduation, they had scattered to different cities to pursue their careers, but now they were all back in town. Jessica had just been made the youngest partner at her investment banking firm. Tara was a corporate lawyer whose name regularly appeared in business journals. Sophia was a dermatologist with a practice catering to celebrities. And their husbands all fit perfectly into their world: a hedge fund manager, a tech entrepreneur, a plastic surgeon. At first, it was just occasional brunch dates and girls' nights out. Amanda would come home excited, full of stories about their old adventures. I was happy for her, truly. Everyone needs friends who knew them before they were part of a couple. But then I noticed the changes. Amanda created a separate group chat with them that she would quickly close when I entered the room. She began making subtle comments about my table manners, suggesting different clothes I might wear that were more appropriate, asking me to watch documentaries on wine appreciation, so I could keep up with conversations. I tried. God knows I tried. I bought nicer clothes. I learned which fork to use for salad. I memorized wine regions and varietals. But it never seemed to be enough. The goalposts kept moving, and the more I changed, the less I recognized myself. The dinner party was Amanda's idea. After 3 months of girls' nights and weekend brunches, she suggested hosting all 3 couples at our home. I was actually relieved. Finally, a chance to meet these friends on my turf to show them I was not just some clueless construction worker who had tricked their friend into marriage. I took the day off work to help prepare. I cleaned the house, while Amanda shopped for ingredients I could not pronounce. I set the table according to the diagram she drew for me. I even put on the new button-down shirt and slacks she had brought home the week before, things I would never choose for myself, but that fit her vision of the night. An hour before guests were due to arrive, I overheard her on the phone in our bedroom. The door was cracked and her voice carried down the hallway. "Yes, everything is ready," she was saying. "No, do not worry. He will be on his best behavior. I promise he will not embarrass me." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Was that how she saw me? As some unruly child who needed to be managed, as someone who might embarrass her in front of her real friends? I almost said something then, but the doorbell rang. It was too late to back out now. The evening started with awkward small talk in our living room. Jessica arrived first with her husband Brad, air-kissing Amanda and barely acknowledging me before commenting on our decor. "The place has potential," she said, looking around with the critical eye of someone mentally renovating every corner. "It is cozy. Very lived in." The way she said lived in made it sound like a euphemism for cheap. Tara and her husband Keith arrived next, followed closely by Sophia and her husband James. They all moved with the easy confidence of people who had never questioned their place in the world. The women immediately fell into reminiscing about college days, inside jokes and memories that excluded me by nature. "We have to tell Hunter about the time you crashed the dean's convertible," Jessica laughed, turning to me, as if including me in the conversation. But before Amanda could respond, Jessica launched into a story so full of unfamiliar names and references that I could not follow along. The others howled with laughter while I smiled politely, feeling increasingly like an outsider in my own home. I tried to steer the conversation towards something I could contribute to. I mentioned the new downtown development project my company was working on, which was actually in a building owned by Jessica's firm. "That is actually in the luxury real estate market," I said, thinking finally I could impress them with my professional knowledge. "We are incorporating some innovative structural elements that will set it apart from anything else downtown." Jessica cut me off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, we are talking about luxury properties, not the kind of work you do," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We are more interested in the investment potential once your people finish the basic construction." My people. As if I were some foreman of a chain gang rather than a project manager with a degree and 15 years of experience. The worst part was Amanda's reaction. Instead of defending me or highlighting my expertise, she laughed along and quickly changed the subject to a gallery opening they had all attended last weekend. Another event I had not been invited to. Throughout dinner, I noticed how Amanda transformed around her friends. Her accent became more pronounced, her vocabulary shifted to include words she never used at home, her laugh became higher and more artificial. It was like watching someone put on a costume of their former self, and I wondered with growing unease if the woman I married was the real Amanda, or if this version was. When Brad asked for another bottle of wine, I volunteered to get it from the kitchen, grateful for a moment alone to compose myself. I was opening the bottle when I heard footsteps and female voices approaching. I stepped behind the pantry door instinctively, not wanting another awkward interaction. It was Jessica and Tara following Amanda into the kitchen. "Seriously, Amanda, I cannot believe you are still with him," Jessica said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You deserve so much better than him." "He is completely out of your league," Tara added. "What were you thinking? Your father must be so disappointed." There was a pause, a moment where my entire future hung in the balance, where my wife could have defended our marriage and the life we had built. "He is really sweet though," Amanda finally said, her voice weak and unconvincing. "And he tries so hard. Like I was a child attempting to ride a bike without training wheels. Like my existence in her world was some ongoing pitiful effort that she tolerated." The wine glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor. All three women jumped, and I stepped out from behind the door. "I will clean this up," I said, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. "Please go back to the dining room." The three exchanged glances before Amanda ushered her friends out, throwing me an unreadable look over her shoulder. I swept up the glass methodically, each shard representing a piece of my marriage that I was just now realizing had been broken all along. When I returned to the dining room with a new bottle of wine, a heavy silence fell over the table. I filled everyone's glasses, then set the bottle down with a deliberately audible thud. "I could not help but overhear your conversation in the kitchen," I said, looking directly at Jessica and Tara. "I would be interested to hear more about why you think I am out of Amanda's league." Jessica, to her credit, did not backpedal. She met my gaze straight on. "Someone needed to say it," she said. "You are holding her back. Amanda was meant for so much more than this middle-class lifestyle. We all expected her to marry someone who could elevate her, not someone she has to constantly explain and apologize for." I looked at Amanda, waiting for her defense, her outrage, any sign that she disagreed with this assessment of our marriage. Her eyes dropped to her plate. She said nothing. In that moment of silence, I heard everything I needed to know. I looked around the table at the faces of these people who had invaded my home and were now dismantling my marriage before my eyes. Brad and Keith looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. Sophia was studying her wineglass with sudden intensity. Tara and Jessica watched me with a mixture of pity and disdain. And Amanda, my wife of 5 years, could not even meet my eyes. The realization crashed over me like a wave. I had been fighting so hard to fit into Amanda's world that I had lost sight of a fundamental truth. In a true partnership, both people defend the relationship against outside attacks. Her silence was not just a momentary lapse. It was a betrayal as profound as any affair could have been. I took a deep breath and stood up, slowly placing my napkin neatly beside my plate. "Thank you all for making things so clear tonight," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Marriage is built on mutual respect and having each other's back. When outsiders disrespect your spouse and you say nothing, you have made a choice about what you value most." I turned to Jessica. "I may not have your education or your family connections, but I have built something real with my own 2 hands. I have never had to step on others to elevate myself." To Tara, I said, "The truly disappointing thing is not who Amanda married, but the shallow values you both still cling to after all these years. Is this who you want to be? People who judge worth by bank accounts and last names." Finally, I looked at my wife. "Is this who you really want to be, Amanda? Someone who stands silent while people insult your husband in his own home? Because if it is, then maybe they are right. Maybe you do deserve someone different. And maybe I deserve someone who is proud to be my partner." I did not yell. I did not curse. I simply spoke my truth, and then walked out of the dining room through the front door and into the cool night air. Behind me, I could hear Amanda calling my name, but I kept walking. I needed space to think, to breathe, to process what had just happened. I ended up driving aimlessly for an hour before checking into a hotel downtown. Once in the anonymous safety of the room, I called my best friend Marcus. He and I had been friends since high school, long before I met Amanda, and he had always seen through her polished veneer. "Man, I am so sorry," he said after I recounted the evening's events. "But honestly, I am not surprised. That crowd has always looked down their noses at anyone who actually works for a living." His words opened a floodgate, and suddenly I was crying for the first time in years. Not quiet, dignified tears, but gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the love I thought was unconditional, for the years spent trying to be good enough for someone who would never see me as an equal. After I had no more tears, left Marcus, and I talked until 3 a.m. We dissected every moment of the past few months. Amanda's increasing criticism, her separate social life, the subtle ways she had been trying to remake me into someone her friends would approve of. "You know what the worst part is," I said as the conversation wound down. "I still love her, but I do not think I can ever look at her the same way again." Sleep finally came as dawn was breaking. When I woke around noon, my phone showed 15 missed calls from Amanda and a string of text messages ranging from confused to angry to pleading. There was also a text from Jessica, of all people. "I am sorry for what I said. It was inappropriate and unkind. Please call Amanda. She is very upset." The apology rang hollow, clearly prompted by Amanda's panic rather than genuine remorse. I texted Amanda that I would be home in an hour to talk. This was not a conversation that could wait. When I arrived home, Amanda was sitting on the couch still in her clothes from the night before. Her makeup was smeared, her eyes red from crying. For a moment my heart ached for her. Then I remembered her silence, and I steeled myself. "They were just joking around, Hunter," she said immediately. "You took it way too seriously. Friends tease each other all the time. Is that what you call it?" "Teasing?" I asked, remaining standing. "Because from where I stood, it sounded like they were telling you to leave your husband. And you did not disagree. You know how Jessica and Tara can be," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "They are just protective of me. They always have been." "Protective from what exactly? Me, the guy who has loved and supported you for 5 years. The guy who has bent over backward to fit into your world." "You are overreacting," she said, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. "They apologized, did not they?" "Jessica texted you." "Because you made her," I said. "Not because she meant it. Tell me honestly, Amanda. Do you think I am out of your league? Do you think you settled when you married me?" Tears filled her eyes, and for a moment I thought she might actually be honest with me. Then she stood up and moved toward me, reaching for my hands. "Of course not, baby," she said. "I love you. You know that." But her eyes darted away from mine as she said it, and I knew. This was about damage control, not truth. She was more concerned about keeping up appearances than addressing the rot at the foundation of our marriage. I stepped back, breaking her attempted embrace. "I need some space," I said. "I am going to stay at an extended stay hotel for a while. I need to think about whether this marriage is still right for either of us." "You cannot be serious," she gasped. "Over one stupid dinner, what will everyone think?" And there it was. Not what about our love or how can we fix this, but what will everyone think? Her true priority laid bare. I went to our bedroom and packed a bag with enough clothes for a week. As I moved around the room, Amanda followed, alternating between tears and anger, promises and accusations. I tuned it out, focusing on the task at hand, trying to ignore the pain threatening to overwhelm me. Before I left, I turned to her one last time. "When you decide you want a husband more than you want the approval of people like Jessica and Tara, call me. Until then, please respect my need for space." The next few weeks were a blur of practical matters and emotional processing. I found a decent extended stay hotel near my work. I consulted with an attorney about a potential separation. I set firm boundaries with Amanda about contact, agreeing only to text unless it was an emergency. I threw myself into work during the day and spent evenings reconnecting with friends I had gradually lost touch with during my marriage. Friends who accepted me exactly as I was. I started hitting the gym regularly, not to transform myself for someone else's approval, but to work through my anger and hurt in a constructive way. Amanda's response evolved over time. First came the gifts delivered to my office, my favorite bourbon concert tickets, a watch I had admired months ago. When those did not work, she enlisted her family. Her mother called to tell me I was being childish. Surprisingly, her father called to say he understood my position and respected my self-respect, which only confused me more. Then came the social media posts about fighting for love and not giving up when times get tough. Mutual friends reported that she was playing the abandoned wife, conveniently leaving out the circumstances that led to our separation. Through it all, I maintained my distance, using the time to reflect on what I truly wanted in a partner and in life. I started therapy, unpacking not just the dinner party incident, but the years of subtle compromises that had eroded my sense of self-worth. For the first time in years, I was rediscovering who Hunter Reynolds was outside of trying to fit into the Warren family social circle. 6 weeks into our separation, Amanda asked to meet at a neutral location. We chose a coffee shop downtown, far from both our usual haunts. When I arrived, she was already there, looking both beautiful and vulnerable in a simple sweater and jeans, more like the Amanda I had fallen in love with than the polished society wife she had become. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down across from her. "I have been doing a lot of thinking." "So have I," I replied, keeping my tone neutral despite the surge of emotions her familiar presence triggered. "I messed up, Hunter," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I should have defended you. I should have told Jessica and Tara to leave if they could not respect my husband. I was a coward." Her admission surprised me. I had expected more deflection, more attempts to minimize what had happened. The sincerity in her voice made my heart ache with what might have been. "Why did not you?" I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. "Did you agree with them? Am I really just some project you took on, some charity case you elevated from the working class?" She wiped away a tear. No, it was never that. I loved you because you were different, because you were real, in a way no one in my world ever was. But then, I got scared. Of what? Of losing them, she admitted. Of being judged, like they judged you. I have known these women since I was 18. They are like sisters to me. I was afraid if I chose you over them completely, I would lose my history, my identity. And now I asked. Now I see that by trying to keep everyone happy, I lost the person who mattered most, she said. I lost myself too. The person I became around them, I do not like her very much. We talked for hours, more honestly than we had in years. She told me how Jessica's seemingly perfect marriage was falling apart, how Tara was in therapy for anxiety, how Sophia was considering leaving medicine altogether. The perfect lives they projected were as illusory as the version of herself she had been projecting. I shared too, how her silence had broken something fundamental between us. How I had spent our marriage feeling like I needed to apologize for my existence. How I had lost sight of my own worth trying to measure up to an impossible standard. By the time we had exhausted ourselves with truth, the coffee shop was closing around us. We stood on the sidewalk outside the future hanging between us like a question. I still love you, Amanda, I said finally. I probably always will. But I do not think I can come home. Some things once broken cannot be fixed. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just want you to know I will always regret that night. And I will always be grateful for the man you are, even if I was too blind to appreciate you when I had the chance. We hugged goodbye, a final embrace that felt like closing a chapter. The next day, I filed for divorce. The following months were about rebuilding. I bought a condo closer to downtown. I accepted a promotion at work that I had previously turned down because Amanda thought the hours would interfere with our social obligations. I went on a fishing trip with my dad that I had been putting off for years. Gradually, the pain dulled from a sharp stab to a lingering ache. I started to envision a future different from the one I had planned with Amanda, but no less meaningful. I learned that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish or cruel. It makes you someone worthy of respect, starting with self-respect. 6 months after the dinner party that ended my marriage, I was having dinner at a new restaurant downtown when I saw her. Amanda was at the bar alone, nursing a glass of wine. She looked up and saw me, and after a moment's hesitation, approached my table. You look good, Hunter, she said, and I could see she meant it. Happy. I am getting there, I replied honestly. How are you? She smiled sadly. Learning a lot of hard lessons. Jessica and Brad are divorcing. Turns out he had been cheating for years. I am sorry to hear that I said and meant it. Do not be. It has been clarifying for all of us. Tara and I are not really speaking anymore. The night you left after you were gone, we had a huge fight. I finally said all the things I should have said when you were there. She told me she had always been jealous of what we had. Real love instead of a strategic partnership. The irony was not lost on either of us. I just wanted to say, she continued, that you were right to leave that night. You deserved better than how I treated you. I know this changes nothing between us, but I needed you to know that I see it now. What I threw away. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of vindication and sadness. Thank you for saying that. She turned to go, then looked back. The best thing you ever did for me was walking out that door, Hunter. It forced me to see who I had become and decide if that was who I wanted to be. As I watched her walk away, I felt the last piece of bitterness dissolve. We had both learned painful but necessary lessons. In losing each other, we had found parts of ourselves that had been suppressed for too long. The marriage could not be saved, but perhaps we had both been saved by its end. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives are the ones that redirect us to a more authentic path. Sometimes standing alone is the only way to discover your true worth. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Do you think a relationship can recover from a betrayal like the one in my story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder of their worth. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you never have to apologize for expecting basic respect, especially from those who claim to love you.